Hello, and welcome to the Patreon Trainer Monthly Education. So, this is going to be done once a month, and I'm going to teach on whatever topics that is requested by the members. My goal with this video is to go in depth into a topic that the majority of people are going to care about and will positively impact your progress, and whether that's in your personal goals and or in business. Today, what I want to do is talk about nutrition coaching and why it matters, how you can manage that for your clients. I think it's one of the more underrated or misunderstood components of being a personal trainer. Often people shy away from giving nutrition advice, but the right advice that applies for most people in most circumstances is actually pretty basic. It's easy to describe what a person should do. It's harder to do it, so they're going to struggle doing it, but it's easy to actually explain what to do. And then your job as the trainer is just coach them through the nuances and how they apply the basics to their life and their food preferences and their body's experience. But the framework for what matters is universal and it's relatively simple to understand. You can give this advice and not worry about legal implication because you're essentially giving a summary of what they will find if they were to do like a Google search across hundreds of videos or a Chat GPT search. If they just want to know what matters in nutrition most, we can give them that framework and then we just let them decide on the specifics. So we're not going to say, hey, you have to eat this or you can't eat this. And then if they run into health issues, there's potential there to be liable. We're going to say, eat whatever your body likes. Eat what's convenient, eat what allows you to be consistent, but eat it within this framework. And then they're essentially making their own choices along the way, and you've just kind of given them a path to go down, and that will reduce liability concerns. And then if you feel as though you don't know enough to give nutrition advice, that's entirely what this video is for. I want to give you the step-by-step, everything that matters, what you can say, and then you're going to feel more confident in that. And then the more you help people, the more you will understand. For example, I did my master's in human nutrition, but I started working with people, coaching people when I was 16 years old. I started getting paid for it when I was 18, and by the time I was in my master's, I think I was 23 or 24 years old. So I had already been doing it for 8 years before I started the program that then gave me like the degree that would qualify me to give the advice. So it's funny, by the time I took my master's, I actually was giving nutrition advice to my professors. I had two of my professors as paying clients before I graduated. And the reason why is typically in human nutrition and registered dietitian programs, they're teaching what would be considered health nutrition, which is how do you eat to regulate blood work and not get diseases or manage diseases and conditions. That's only one aspect of nutrition. There's performance nutrition and there's aesthetic nutrition. If we just kind of break it down into some bigger categories, you can go subsections there if you want. But there's health, how do I eat so my blood work looks good? Performance, how do I eat so I can actually perform well given my sport or my activity or whatever I'm doing? And then aesthetic nutrition, which is how do I eat to look a certain way? My professors knew the health nutrition out the wazoo. That's why they were college professors. But they didn't know the performance and they definitely didn't know the aesthetic nutrition part. So that's what I was able to teach and show them. And again, I was the one doing that as a student, not the professor. I didn't have the degree yet, but I had been working with people for 8 years already. So the more experience you get working with people, it's going to increase your knowledge and your confidence. You can't have confidence before you do something. You get confidence by doing it. So if you say to yourself, well, I don't really feel confident doing nutrition. Well, you never will. Until you do it, and then all of a sudden you're like, okay, I've learned some things along the way. The advice I'm giving is really helping people. I'm getting better and better at giving the advice over time. I can see now that what I know is making a difference in people's lives. And then all of a sudden you feel confident. You can't feel confident beforehand. You want to feel competent, but you're not going to feel confident. The competence part comes from today's video. The confidence comes from applying it. So the first thing I want to do is go over why nutrition is important for trainers. Too often people think, as long as I exercise, I'm going to get the results I want. Hell no. Gosh, no. Not even remotely close. And one way of us thinking of this is when someone comes to us and they want to make a change in their body, one of the things we can think of is we're trying to build progress. It would be similar to building a house. If I want to build a brick house, I have to have bricks, but then I have to have people to put those bricks together. So I have to have workers and bricks. If I want to build progress, if I want to build muscle, if I want to build strength, if I want to build the progress of fat loss, I'm going to need same things. I'm going to need the material to do it with and the worker, or like the stimulus to make that change. So if I want to build muscle, I want to work out so my body has the desire and feels the need to build muscle. But what is it going to build the muscle with? Like what is a brick house made of? It's made of bricks. What is muscle made of? It's made of protein. If somebody does not manage their nutrition in any way, and especially if they're eating insufficient amounts of protein now, how the hell are they going to build new structures without new material, right? So if I want to build muscle, I have to have something to build it with. I have to have the material. If you want to get stronger, that involves more like neurological changes. You're definitely going to have some muscle changes along the way, but it's a lot of neurological changes. That is still protein dependent. Protein is how it's what our body uses to manage repair, maintenance, and building of new structures. Now, carbs and fats come into play because the process of building new structures requires energy. So you have to have the material the new structures are going to be made of, and then you have to have the energy to do that work. And that's where carbs and fats come in. This is a very simplistic way of thinking of it, but it works. So protein is the material, carbs and fats is the fuel. If they're not eating consistently, if we don't know what they're eating, they're not going to get consistent, and we don't even know if they will, get new structures and progress in that way. If we think of fat loss, you might think, it doesn't really matter if they're eating material. If they're eating excess, we actually want them to be in a deficit. That's true, but they have to be in an appropriate deficit. We know that through studies and research that to lose a pound of fat, we have to be in a 3,500 calorie energy deficit, which is 3,500 calories from carbs and fats. If you are from where your baseline is, and you consume 3,500 calories less than your baseline in carbs and fats, you will have lost a pound of fat. The challenge is if we do not track or monitor or control our eating in some way, studies have actually shown, they've done studies where they said people, hey, eat as you normally would. We're going to kind of track what you're doing food-wise, though. We're just going to pay attention to what you're doing, and then we want you to do this exercise program. What they found was people will do the exercise program, they'll start, eating clean. They try to make healthy choices. They say no more often than yes when they're getting hungry and have cravings. But over time, their nutrition adjusts. They start to eat a little bit more. They tend not to eat more random foods, like additional foods, but they'll eat larger portion sizes. Or maybe they'll graze a little bit between their meals. They'll slowly eat more if it is not tracked. Our body's response to being underfed is to feed itself. So if we don't have a way to measure that, we will slowly lose control of the deficit and they will normalize out to their activity level. So for example, somebody starts exercising, let's say they burn an extra 1,000 calories a week, they will slowly over time start to eat an extra 1,000 calories a week. We have to track what we do and have some degree of awareness so we can control where we're at to know if we're an appropriate enough deficit that it'll equate to the 3,500 calorie deficit that we need to lose a pound of fat. I talked with a client today who had been doing a carnivore diet, and he said he kind of just didn't have great energy, and he lost the weight initially, but then the weight loss plateaued. And no matter what diet structure somebody follows, that's a very common pattern is they see an initial change and then they see a plateau. When they do a diet, carnivore, by the way, is really just fats and proteins, and you try to avoid carbohydrates. When you do any diet that reduces carbohydrates, you're reducing how much water is stored within the muscle cells in the form of glycogen. So you're going to get an initial drop in weight related to the reduction of water being retained within the body. You're going to see that reduction, if you weigh yourself every day, you'll see that in the first few days. It'll start to, dissipate around, day 7, 8, 9, 10, then it kind of plateaus. Whereas if somebody only weighs once a week, they might see a change in the first week, smaller change in the second, and then no change. That's very common, and we want to make sure we avoid that for many reasons. But one main reason is the client is not going to be motivated to keep doing what you're asking them to do to continue to pay you for training sessions. If they feel that their progress is stagnated, they're going to start to say, well, this isn't working, and they're going to start to look for other options. Or they're going to look, who's at fault? Well, if they're not tracking their nutrition in any way whatsoever, it's going to have significant impact on what you're doing and what you're getting for your training, but they don't know what they are or are not doing, so they're going to blame your training. They're going to say, oh, I feel stiff, I feel tired, this training is too much, we need to do less. Or, yeah, I lost a lot of weight right away, but I haven't really been losing weight, maybe we need to do more. And then all of a sudden you start over-exercising, the under-eating, and then things get worse and worse and worse. So nutrition has an absolute impact on the progress that you can produce via your training. And if you don't track nutrition, if you don't pay attention to it, you don't know what you're going to really get for your training because they don't have the material to make the changes. They don't have the material to recover. They're going to feel like crap. They're going to be demotivated when they don't get progress. They're going to quit or they're going to blame you. And it's just always going to be this struggle. And what you'll see is their progress happens in spurts at all if it does. If we track nutrition, we have much more consistency with what we're going to get for what we're doing. You then also give them some work to do that's on them. It is important that they track nutrition. But now also, if they're like, oh man, I feel tired and very sore, I think our training is too much. Say, well, actually, if we look at the food, you haven't been eating as many calories as we would like, and your protein is really low. The calories is our energy. Protein is how our body repairs, so we don't feel stiff and sore. I don't think we need to adjust the training as much as we need to adjust that food. So that gives you the right thing to blame. Not that we're looking for blame, but if we're going to use that word, that gives you the right thing to blame because it is the insufficient nutrition that's causing the problem, not that you're overtraining the person. So you don't want to be just adjusting training programs all the time whenever they're not the culprit. You're just going to make an adjustment, see a week or two or maybe a whole month, and then all of a sudden things are still crappy, you make another adjustment, and here you are writing new programs all the time, and it's never the program's problem when it's actually the underlying nutrition. So that tells us that nutrition is important. It does have a significant impact on the progress we can make, the way the client feels, and our ability to actually retain clients and build positive word of mouth. If a person doesn't have a great experience due to the nutrition being insufficient, they're not going to tell everybody. Everybody's not going to notice that they're making all these great progress and say, what are you doing? And they're like, oh, I've been working with this trainer, da, 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 da. You're not going to get that referral, and you're not going to get them to stay. It is a recipe for going out of business or very, 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 very much struggling to stay in business. The more you can control nutrition, the more you can control the outcome of your clients' experiences, and the more you can control your income. So that is very helpful. And then if you're listening to this video, if you paid for the Patreon program, chances are you just want to make a difference in the world and you want to be good at what you do. And that is going to matter as much as income, if not more for some of you, it's going to matter. And you want to be good at what you do. Tracking nutrition, paying attention to nutrition, learning about nutrition does make you a better trainer. It makes you more helpful to the person that's paying you to help them. And you're just going to feel more satisfied and gain that confidence that you're looking for as a trainer by knowing more and being able to better control the client outcome and experience. Okay, so we talked about why nutrition is important. Now I have some notes, so I'm going to be looking a little bit away from the camera. But what I want to do next is to talk about what do we track. Really, the big things we want to track are calorie intake, protein intake, and then how we distribute those throughout the day. You can talk about meal timing. I tend to get away from the term meal timing because people have a predetermined definition of what a meal is. For a lot of people, that is like they have to stop, sit down, prepare things, and have like an experience. Whereas how I would typically define a meal is I just put something in my face that had calories. That was a meal. So you run into some issues where people are like, oh, I don't have time to have a meal. And I'm like, you have time to eat a protein bar or drink a shake or have a 100-calorie snack pack of like nuts. And they're like, oh, because they think of that more as a snack than a meal. They have these definitions. So I use the term distribution. So we're going to do calories, protein, and distribution. Calories, of course that matters. Our total calorie intake, you could measure it if you wanted to say, okay, what are my carb and fat calories, carbohydrate and fat calories, and then what are my protein calories? Those are really the entities we're looking for, but nobody really measures carbs and fats separate from protein. So if you were to say, okay, I want you to eat 1,200 calories from carbs and fats, and then 600 calories from protein, they're going to have trouble kind of doing that. That's going to be a little bit more math and complicated for them. So we just track calories in their entirety, and then we also track how much protein is within those calories, and then that secondarily controls and tracks our carb and fats. It's just the way nutrition fact labels are set up and the way we've experienced tracking foods that makes the most sense is you track the whole thing and then you track the subsection of protein, and then that gives you the difference whether you know you're doing that or not. So calories, how many calories we should have. Quick and simple formula is body weight times 15, then make some adjustments as you go. If you want to have a more precise formula, which totally would recommend, calories times 15 is more so if I'm in a conversation with somebody like, how much should I eat? I'm like, well, how much do you weigh? And then I just do the math in my head and give it back to them. And then I coach them that they're going to need to make changes. But that gives you in the ballpark. That's the idea. So I want to be in the ballpark. Now, how do you get more closer to the right guess? Is you can go to bmrcalculator.net. Just Google search that. So BMR calculator, it's the website is calculator.net. Then they have a BMR calculator. But any BMR calculator will get you closer to the ballpark. They're going to ask you probably age, gender, weight, and then you're going to put all that in. It's going to spit you back out a number. But hopefully what it does is it gives you a chart. So the calculator.net website, the BMR calculator, gives you a chart that says, okay, your BMR, which is your basal metabolic rate, that's how many calories you burn just simply by being alive. So if you're to lay in bed with your eyes closed, that's how many calories you need for your body just to function. But then it's going to give you a chart and say, okay, well, if you're sedentary, eat this many calories, and that would be for maintenance. So if you plugged it in and you weighed 180 pounds, it would tell you the calories to stay at 180 pounds. So it's going to say sedentary exercises 2 to 3 times a week, 3 to 4 times a week, vigorous daily exercise, da 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 da. You would pick then, based on your or the client's activity level, where do they fall, and then that gives you a number. That's going to be more precise than body weight times 15, absolutely. But you have to have Google and you have to go through a little bit of a process for that, so I wanted to give both. What you do then is with that number, we'll talk in a second about how do you make some adjustments to that. Protein is 0.6 to 1.2 times your body weight in grams of protein per day. What is that? So if you weighed 150 pounds, you would multiply that by 0.6 and then multiply it by 1.2. That range gives you how many grams of protein you should have a day. If you use the full range of 0.6 to 1.2, that's enormous, but that gives you kind of the full gamut, the full scope of where their protein should be. 0.6 to zero point 0.8, if you use that sub range, that's if people don't really lift weights. They're coming to you they want to be generally healthy. Maybe they go for walks, maybe they do a little bit of yoga, but they don't really do any resisted training. 0.6 to zero point 0.8 is a good range to have them aim for. If somebody does work out, but they're not like an athlete, they're not going to the gym and crushing themselves, they're just doing general fitness workouts, 0.8 to 1 is a good range. And then if the more aggressive somebody trains, the heavier they train, the more frequently they train, the more intense they're training, you would have them go from 1 to 1.2. Now, if somebody is taking extra supplementation, meaning like steroids and derivatives like that, they can go over the 1.2. If you're listening to this video, I would definitely recommend you work with a coach to learn more details about the impacts of that before you actually coach those athletes. So there you go. I would say learn a lot more. Talk to me individually, and we'll discuss that. But that range of 0.6 to 1.2 is going to give you that full range. And like I said, 0.6 to 0.8, people who don't lift weights. 0.8 to 1 is people who lift weights but not super intense. 1 to 1.2 is very aggressive weight training. That is now going to give you the total calories they should have, total protein they should have, and then distribution is really simple. It's going to sound maybe some weirdness, but once you figure this out, it's going to make sense. So people typically sleep 6 to 8 hours a day, and out of a 24-hour day, that means we're awake for 16 to 18 hours. If we think of the day in sections, that allows us to best distribute our food. What I like to do is have clients divide the time that they're awake per day into 3 sections. Roughly, you can say it's 3 sections of 6 hours. Do they need to be to the minute 6 hours? No. 5 to 6, somewhere in there, good enough. But the first 6 hours that they're awake would be the first 1/3 of their day. The second 6 hours they're awake is the second 1/3 of the day. And then the final, whatever hours of being awake, usually around 6, that's the final 1/3 of their day. So if we divide the waking portion of the day by 3, that gives us 3 sections of the day. So we would divide our calorie target and our protein target by 3, and that gives us the amount of calories and the amount of protein that we should aim for per section of the day, per third of the day. So the first 6 hours, I would have 1/3 of my calories of protein. The second 6 hours, 1/3 of my calories of protein. The final 6 hours or so, the final 1/3 of my calories and protein. There are a lot of benefits to having distribution spread out throughout the day like this. A couple major benefits is people will typically feel better energy throughout the day. Most people are most active in the middle of the day. But what usually happens is they wake up late, so they eat very minimal, if at all. Then they go through their most active part of the day and they barely eat anything or barely eat enough to maintain that activity level. And then at the end of the day, when they're least active, they eat a whole bunch of food. So their activity curve goes like that, but their food curve is wham. So what that leads to is body composition wise, it's not optimal. Energy feeling throughout the day, it's not optimal. If you look at diets that just simply control calories per 24 hours, you can control someone's weight, even if their activity versus their intake, like when they're most active versus when they eat, even if those don't sync up, they can actually still control their body weight. But they're not going to have maximal body composition and they're not going to feel that great. So they can hold their body weight where they want, they can push it up or push it down wherever they want, but maybe in their workouts they kind of feel like crap and they don't have great energy. Maybe during the day they feel soft and pudgy and they feel kind of like fat in their pants. They feel bloated and just watery. They don't feel good. And that demotivates them, makes them feel depressed, and they're not making the progress that they wanted aesthetically. If we distribute our calories to better match when we use our calories, we tend to have less energy drops. They're going to have better motivation, feel better throughout the day. It leaves the body in a less stressed state, which reduces cortisol production. Cortisol is a stress hormone, so when we're doing more activity than we're eating food to support that activity, we produce more cortisol. Cortisol helps us kind of mitigate the energy deficit, but it causes increased water retention and it can impact sleep. It also can impact mood. So the lower the cortisol, the better. And so those things are going to help us. And then composition-wise also, we build muscle Our body decides to build muscle if we have sufficient material 24/7. So if I have protein evenly distributed throughout the day, I have all of those opportunities to build muscle. If I don't have any protein during the day and I have all my protein at night, ugh, I'm really only going to get muscle building during that part that I have the food, and then I actually have to take some of that protein to repair from all the damage that was happening that I wasn't mitigating through the process there. So I tend to be able to make up for the recovery of the activity I was doing, but I now have a short time frame to actually build muscle by the end of the day. So it helps aesthetically, it helps with energy, helps with mood, helps with our motivation, helps with our experience through the diet to have our food more evenly distributed throughout the day and dividing our day into 3 sections. So I call them time blocks. This is a time block method. Is, okay, I'm going to have a time block of 6 hours in the morning, a time block of 6 hours in the middle of the day, a time block of 6 hours-ish at the end of the day. If you divide your waking part of the day into 3, then you divide your calories and protein by 3, and you aim for that, each block, that's going to help you manage distribution. So I was saying earlier that the concepts of what to do nutrition-wise are easy. This is what I'm referring to, is you have to have your calories properly set up. You have to have protein, make sure they have the right target there. And then you just eat, per section of the day, 1/3 of your calories and protein. That's it. So coming back to calories, one thing I would do is I would always give people a range. So if you do the calculator.net and you find out that they're supposed to have, say, 2,400 calories. Well, again, remember that that's at maintenance. So what we have to do is we have to decide, do we need to adjust that number? If the person is wanting to lose body fat, you would want to go under what that number recommends because you want to promote that 3,500 calorie deficit by the end of the week. I'll get to that in a second. If the person is okay, like where they're at weight-wise, but they would just like to be better body composition, they want a little less fat, a little more muscle, a little leaner, but they don't really need to lose weight, well, then you'd stay at maintenance because you're now going to be consistent with those calories, they're going to be consistent with protein, they're going to be working out, they're going to get that composition change that they want. If somebody is wanting to build muscle or gain weight, bodybuilder, things like that, where they want their weight to go up, then you want to go above what that recommendation is for calories on the calculator.net process. Now, how much up do you go? Again, we're aiming to form around a 3,500 calorie surplus to make sure that we're providing enough material to gain the muscle and weight that we want, but we're not just accruing a ton of fat. How much of those calories contribute to actual muscle tissue is a highly genetically and individual dependent process. There's an enormous amount of variance. So unfortunately, there isn't a calculation like 3,500 calorie surplus equals 1 pound of muscle. There isn't a calculation for that. We do know that muscle accrues very slowly, even if the person is taking, I mentioned earlier, steroids, like excess exogenous hormones. Their rate of protein synthesis, like muscle creation, is going to be a little higher, but it's not so high that they can pack on pounds of muscle a week. In most circumstances, it would be amazing if they could gain a pound of muscle a week. That's not really going to happen. You're going to see, in best case scenarios, usually about a half a pound of muscle being gained per week. But usually it's a lot less than that as well. So it's kind of a depressing process. So you can work your butt off and gain muscle at a rate of like 1/4 pound per week. So maybe in a whole month you might gain 1 pound of muscle. And that's just the way it is. It's unfortunate, but that's the way it is. So when we think of eating in a surplus to allow our weight to go up, the more we allow it to go up above what would be a typical muscle developing rate, which is say 1/4 to half a pound a week, if I'm gaining 2 pounds a week, I know there's no way that that's muscle. It's going to be like 1.5 pounds of fat. We don't need to gain fat. That's not really going to help us. So weight gain rate should be around 1/2 to 1 pound a week. And the reason why I'm going a little over that range of the 1/4 to half for the muscle is we want to just make sure we maximize that process. So you can err a little bit on the side of gaining some body fat if the person's okay with that. But that would be around, the goal is about half a pound to 1 pound of weight increase per week on average. That would be a rate that you're looking for. For fat loss, after the initial, say, 2 weeks of a diet, whenever everything's kind of normalized out, like water composition, the water like retention due to glycogen and all that stuff, when that's normalized out, you're going to see an enormous range of response. You can have people who lose body fat but actually gain weight if they've never lifted weights before, and now all of a sudden they're lifting weights. They're going to build muscle because now they have sufficient protein that they've never had before. They have the stimulus to lift weights that they've never had before. So I had a client one time, I asked her to work together with me for 2 months. Don't weigh yourself, don't do anything. Let's just work together for 2 months. And I said, after 2 months, I want you to try on the same pair of pants. So day one, I said, try on the tightest pair of pants you have. Then she did that, and I said, don't do anything else for 8 weeks. In 8 weeks, she gained 7 pounds, but she lost 2 pant sizes. She had never lifted weights before. I knew that if she tracked her body weight, she was going to probably see an increase at first. And that was going to freak her out. And she actually even said to me, well, when she came in, she goes, oh my God, when I saw the scale, I was like, I would have fired you a long time ago. And I started laughing. I was like, I know, that's why I said don't get on the scale. But she was extremely happy. But that is something you can see, is you might see weight increase even though someone's losing body fat if they're totally new to weight training. You can see the weight stagnate. Maybe it really doesn't make any change at all, or it can go down. So when you think about tracking weight change as a form of tracking fat loss, it's not highly accurate. When you step on a scale, what the scale is measuring is everything. Like your bones, your hair, your skin, your muscle mass, your fat mass. It is weighing the water that's within your body. So if you're hydrated or dehydrated, that can change it. It's weighing the food that is still within you. So if you ate a big meal last night and you didn't go to the bathroom yet, that's still inside you. So that's what it's weighing. A scale measures literally everything. So a change in weight on scale doesn't isolatively mean that my body fat has changed. It could be a whole bunch of other things that have influenced that change separate from body fat. So tracking body fat loss via a scale is not the most accurate method. I do have people weigh themselves, but we do a bunch of other tracking methods as well. So we talked about what do we track. We talked about how do we figure out our targets. And then the next thing I want to talk about is how do we track it. You can do a nutrition app. You can have the person choose any app. Doesn't really matter. They all have pros and cons, more cons than pros. But you can use any app. So there's MyFitnessPal, Chronometer, My Macros, Macro First, My Plate. There's bajillions of things. They can use an app if they want. That helps them see the data and the consistency over days and weeks and months, and that helps you as a trainer see the data and consistency over days, weeks, months. What I would do when you use an app, though, is don't track the meals individually. Don't track breakfast separate from mid-morning, separate from lunch, separate from mid-afternoon, separate from dinner. Just track 3 sections of the day. The first section you track is the first 6 hours. So everything that they eat in the first 6 hours goes in one entry. Whether that's labeled breakfast, whether it's labeled, meal 1, who gives a crap, whatever it's labeled. If they pay for the ability to adjust the labeling, I think like MyFitnessPal, you have to pay, and then you can adjust the name of things. I don't know if it's free or not, if you have to pay. I think you have to pay for that. If they pay for that, fine, then adjust that and just say first time block. And I do that for clients all the time. And then I also get rid of it tracking like sodium, potassium, fiber, things like that. We're just tracking calories, protein, and then paying attention to the distribution of those things throughout the day. We're going to cover micronutrients and stuff like that in a whole nother video, a whole nother day. We'll save that for another time. But we want to track calories, protein per 3 sections of the day. They can use any app, just have them enter all of their food in the first 6 hours as one meal, all the food in the second 6 hours as one meal, and then all the food in the final 6 hours as one meal. So they can use an app, totally fine, can do that. Some people don't like using an app. We do still need to kind of measure out or portion out our food. We do need to know how many calories is in it, how much protein is in it. But they can do that mental math if they're okay with that. They don't have to use an app. I had a different person I was talking to this morning. They said that they hate apps, but they had tracked before and they were used to weighing and measuring their food. And I said, okay, well, let's not use the app, but at least you put in the foundation now to know how to do that. So for us, for our progress, why don't we just track per 6 hours? So for them, let's say it turns out that they need 800 calories and 60 grams of protein per 6 hours. Well, they're not going to get exactly 800 every single time. So I might give them a 200 calorie range or even a 300 calorie range. So maybe I want them to go, hey, can you get between 700 and 900? And for protein, can you get between 50 and 70? If you can get within those ranges in 6 hours, great. And then forget about everything you just ate and go to the next 6 hours. What often people struggle with is at the end of the day or sometime during the day, they're like, oh my God, I have to put in all the numbers and things I had for breakfast. I don't really even remember what I had for breakfast. What did I have for lunch? Did I have lunch? Did I have 2 of those? Did I have 1 of those? I don't even measure that thing, so I don't even know what was in that. So it's overwhelming. It's stressful. It takes forever. They don't like looking up all this stuff. It's very frustrating. So we can do it per 6 hours. Makes it a lot easier. And then rather than remembering everything throughout the day. And then if they do it mentally, they can just kind of take each 6-hour section as its own thing. So they're going to say, okay, the first 6 hours for breakfast, I had this. I was around 400 calories. I think I had 30 grams of protein. I'm kind of low on protein. Okay, let me have a protein bar mid-morning. That'll give me another 200 calories. That'll put me close enough on range, maybe 250 calories. That'll give me in range for calories. And then that'll give me another 20 grams of protein. That'll bump me up to 50, so I know I'm there. And then they're like, okay, good, done. That's it. So once those 6 hours are over, they forget about and they don't have to pay attention to anything they've already eaten. They now move on to the next 6 hours. So what they had already in the day, who gives a crap? Now they move on to the next 6 hours. It makes it a lot easier to mentally manage because you're really only managing 1 or 2 meals at a time. And that's it. So it's just super simple, super easy that way. So that's how we track it. You can use an app or you can just track things in your mind if you read nutrition labels or Google real quick. You know, like today, for example, I had Yukon potatoes as my carb source for lunch. And I wanted to know what put me around 300 to 400 calories. And that was actually about 400 grams. If you weighed it on a scale, 400 grams of Yukon potatoes will put me around 400 calories and around 80-ish grams of carbs because I was counting carbs. But that's all you got to do is like Google that. Okay, it says this, put it on a scale, done. And now I know, okay, what does that look like? And then every time I now eat potatoes, just put out the same portion size that looked about that same size. Maybe every, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times, maybe I'll check myself once on a scale just to make sure I'm not adding things in my mind. One of the things that always is funny is like a 2 tablespoon scoop of peanut butter. Oh God, eventually it turns into just whatever the hell fits on a spoon, and they call that tablespoon. I'm like, no, that was a freaking like half a jar on a spoon. So some things we have to weigh more often just to track ourselves. Usually the better it tastes, the more often we lie to ourselves and increase our portion sizes. So that's how we track things. Now, how do we make adjustments? We want to track body weight. That'll give us an idea of what's going on. It's not the most accurate, and I'm going to give you a bunch of other things, but it is a factor. And it's good for people to be aware of what contributes to body weight, that it's not a pure indication of building muscle, it's not a pure indication of fat loss. It's something we kind of pay attention to, but it's not the be-all, end-all of what's happening. The other thing we track is body composition, and you can track that through photos. You can do photos if you want. You don't have to do photos if you don't feel comfortable or the person doesn't feel comfortable. I have more clients than not that don't do photo tracking. But if they do photos, just have them wear whatever they're comfortable with. This is a great time not to be a creepo. and just like, they're like, well, what do you want me to wear? I'm like, well, what do you feel comfortable? Like, are you okay with a bathing suit, or would you rather wear just like short shorts and a crop top? What do you feel okay with? Sending some random person on the internet. And they'll laugh a little bit. And if they have a spouse, I usually tell them to check in with their spouse, make sure the spouse knows we're doing this. But let them decide, as long as you can see some skin, on their arms, their upper chest, upper back, maybe their thighs, as long as, like belly, as long as you can see something, you can then focus on that to see if you're seeing the change you want. And then also you can have them do repeating of clothes, have them put on tight clothes. And then every month they put on that same pair of pants or the same shirt and just see how that feels different, if it does feel different, each month when they put that back on. Those are going to be really good indicators. Then We want to track training performance. You want to make sure that they're increasing their performance, they're getting better in their training, they're able to add some weight, add some reps, maybe not every single week, but every other week. I usually have clients do programs for 4 weeks at a time, and then we get a whole new program for 4 weeks. So every 4 weeks, they get brand new programs. And you'll see in the Patreon service, I'll be uploading new training programs every 4 weeks because that's how frequently I upload and give new workouts to my clients. So I like 4 weeks because the first week they figure out what the hell they're supposed to be doing. The second week they get a little better because it's the second time they've ever done it. They're going to make some improvement. The third week, the improvement gets a little harder to make, but it's possible. The fourth week, really hard to do without sacrificing technique. So then we move on to new movements and new exercises. If you continue to go longer than 4 weeks, usually the person has to give up technique quality in order to add some type of progression. And then if the person doesn't make any progressions, the stimulus of the workout lessens and lessens and lessens over time. Therefore, the body's response to make adjustments based on the workout lessens and lessens and lessens over time. So those are the things we look for. Now, every 4 weeks is usually when I adjust calories. So if the person is unhappy, they need more calories for more energy, just double check that they're doing everything correct first. Do not adjust the targets if they're not getting the targets right, unless it's causing them a lot of stress and they're like, man, like I'm supposed to be getting 160 grams of protein, but I'm hurting, like I'm only getting 120. I wouldn't just now say, okay, well 120 is okay. Don't do that. Keep it at 160. But say, hey, well, if we're at 120 now, do you think we can get to 140? Let me look and see what you're doing. Let me see what you're eating. It looks like we can change this portion here. This food versus this food is more protein dense. Why don't we have this instead of this? And now all of a sudden they're hitting 140 more consistently. And they're like, oh, you're doing great. Like we're getting so much closer to 160. So you still keep the goal, what the hell it's supposed to be, but you coach them up along the way. You help them reach that goal. You don't just say like, well, your goal is 160 and you're only 120. You suck. So coach them up, cheer them on. Like, how would you want someone to talk to you? How would you want someone to help you if you thought they had all the answers? You'd be like, well, tell me what I'm doing wrong and freaking help me, right? That's what you'd want. So that's what you can do for your clients. So I do adjust calories every 4 weeks. I do it more often, but what I'd recommend to you is to adjust calories every 4 weeks. But don't adjust things unless they're doing everything perfect. I guess not perfect. That's a bad word to use. No one's going to be perfect with their food. But if somebody's hitting their targets 5 out of 7 days a week, great. That's consistent enough. If they're only getting 4 out of 7, I would coach them up to try to do 5 out of 7 before you make changes. If they're doing 5 out of 7 or 6 out of 7 or 7 out of 7, great. Now it is time to move and make changes. So that's the consistency that we would like is 5 out of 7 days they hit their targets. And if that's true, then you can adjust the targets. So for body weight, if they want to lose weight faster, you want to make caloric adjustments that add up to 1,750 to 3,500 calories by the end of the week. So it's a half a pound to a pound of fat by the end of the week. You can do 500 calories a day. That equals 3,500 calories by the end of the week. Or you can do 250 calories a day if it seems rough to them to do 500. That equals a half a pound of extra fat loss per week. So that's a good adjustment. Think about, okay, if they want to lose more body fat, I know a pound of fat is 3,500 calories. If we could increase the rate of at least half a pound per week over the next 4 weeks, meaning they lose 2 extra pounds, they're going to be happy. That's an increased rate of progress. They're going to feel more happy about that. So that's 250 calories a day. Maybe on like training days, I don't adjust any decrease, and then on non-training days, I drop 500. So you can space it out to where you don't have to do the adjustment every single day. You might do calorie cycling, which is you have higher days and lower days, but at the end of the week, you want it to equate to that half pound to 1 pound worth of calorie loss deficit. So that's 1,750 to 3,500 calories. If they're wanting to gain weight faster, the opposite, you add 250 to 500 based on the rate that you want to increase by. If they're not making composition changes, I would be surprised. I would say, hold on a second, let's double check those photos, let's double check your clothes. Rarely, if somebody's hitting around their maintenance calories and their protein and they're lifting out like often, they're rarely not going to see really any composition change. There's going to be something happening. But if you need to, if you're like, well, okay, if you're feeling stagnant, would you rather favor a little bit more fat loss and see some definition, or would you rather favor building a little more weight and getting a little extra muscle? So then you push the calories up a little bit, up or down a little bit, and that lets them feel like something's new and different, and you see a little bit of a change. But typically, if their goal is body composition change, but they don't really care if their weight changes, you don't typically need to change calories much. Just calories, protein, and just keep making sure they're hitting their targets and progressing in training. Okay, protein you almost never need to change, so don't worry about that. When it comes to specific foods, they're going to ask you, is it okay to eat potatoes? Is carbs fine? Like I have this, and I really like this with my coffee in the morning. Is that okay? They're going to have a million questions. Everyone's questions are about like food specifics. What we want to answer with is eat what your body likes. Like eat what food likes you. I stumbled through the wording of that. So typically what you'll hear is people say like, eat what you like. No, eat what likes you. And what I mean by that is digestion. If you eat something and you feel bloated and fat and lazy afterwards, don't eat that again. Like you might like the way that tasted, but that didn't like you. You felt like crap. So you want to eat foods that don't bloat you, that don't crash your energy, that digest well. You don't want to have to be running to the bathroom after eating. So eat what likes you. If they feel good after eating a food, have that more often. If they don't feel good after eating a food, have that less often. There you go. Then carbs versus fats really doesn't matter. You can have any percentage of either. Doesn't have to be high carb, high fat, low fat. Doesn't matter whatsoever. There's tons of research about that. There is absolutely 100% no need to predetermine the percentage of carbs and fats a person would have throughout the day. If anybody tells you that, they are misinformed and they're not up to date with nutrition information. And I would question what else they might not know. But no one, meaning you, should predetermine the percentage of carbs and fats for a person. It is unnecessary. Whew. Okay, with that said, when they're more active, they're going to want the energy from what they eat to be more available, like to be available faster. And that's going to be carbohydrates. Carbohydrates digest faster than fats do. So when I eat a carbohydrate, I get the energy from the carbohydrate sooner than I would from a fat. Now, when I'm inactive, sitting on my butt, not doing anything, I don't really want to eat a ton of carbohydrates because that's going to flood my system, but I'm just sitting there doing nothing. I'm not going to really use it very well. So you would favor more fats. Doesn't mean you have to be exclusive, but the percentage of fat versus carbs would be like fats are higher when you're less active. Carbs are higher when you're more active. So carbs are the active nutrient. Like when you're active, you focus more on that. Fats are more the like do nothing nutrient. So it's slow. So when you're moving slow, eat fats. When you're moving fast, eat carbs. There's a good way of kind of thinking through that. And that's more so experiential. It doesn't have anything to do with whether one is better for fat loss than the other, at certain moments, or building muscle at certain moments. What you'll find is, again, if you eat what likes you and you eat foods that digest at the rate that you want the energy available, it just happens to be carbs are favored more when you're more active, fats are favored more when you're less active. That's the goal. Okay, then that's pretty much it. You want to adjust every month, like we said, based on the results they're seeing with the tracking progress, the body weight, the photos, how their clothes are fitting, their training progress. But that is the basics, the format, the structure of what we do. They're going to ask you questions. You're going to answer them to the best of your knowledge. If they ask you something that you do not say, I do not know the answer to that, but I will find out and I will send it to you. And then I try to usually do that by the next day. So I give myself 24 hours to go figure that out. You don't have to commit to that, but that's what I usually do. So if somebody asks me something, I'm like, that's a great question. I've heard of it. I'm familiar with it to some degree, but I want to give you a better answer. Let me go do a little bit of research and I'll let you know. They're going to trust you then on what your answer is rather than you spitting out something and then they find out later and you find out later that it was wrong. Don't do that. So don't say things you don't know. Don't say things that aren't true. If you don't know, just say you don't know. You might say like, oh my gosh, they're gonna question whether I'm a good trainer or not. No, they're not. If you're a good person, you're treating them well, you're taking care of all the other things that are involved in the process. You're a good listener, you're an active listener. You're making great fun workouts, you're fun to be around, you're positive influence, and then you just happen not to know how much fiber is in celery. Who gives a shit? Just go figure that out and then tell them. They're not going to question your value if you don't know something like a nuancy thing like that. Totally fine. You want to think of trust and your totality of knowledge, not individual little circumstances and things like that. So answer what you can, go learn what you can, and then I usually like to send a resource. So rather than just saying, well, I looked it up and it says XYZ, I would say, hey, I looked it up. One resource I found that was really cool was this. Here's a link to this. And then also the answer is XYZ. I love that. They're going to love that because you provide enormous value in your answer because you give them an opportunity to go learn more things and you can prove how in-depth of work you looked into and like this great resource. It's such a better user experience whenever your answer has a resource attached like that. Now, if you're looking for resources, you found one. Hello. So you can use Patreon. Again, if you're part of this service, you can ask questions, weekly questions, and I'll answer them. So ask questions there. You can also check out the podcast. I do a podcast currently. It's doing 3 episodes a week. I'm currently doing nutrition on Monday, training on Wednesday, and then random on Friday. But it has over 2,200 episodes. I used to do it every single day for like 5 years. So 2,000 plus episodes. You can find whatever the hell you want. If you can't find a topic, just put that in the trainer community on Patreon. Say, hey, I was looking for a podcast topic on XYZ, and then I'll send you the link or I'll get you the answer. Okay? But that is our approach on nutrition. That is everything that matters, how we track it, why we track it, what we track, all that stuff. I hope that this was helpful. I hope it gave you some good insight into nutrition coaching. If you have questions on how to turn this into a service or you have a little more uncertainty yet, just reach out. My email is brutalirongym@gmail.com. One thing I always recommend, if you want to turn this into something you regularly do and you really want to feel confident with it, is to do some one-on-one coaching with me. Over half of my current clients are personal trainers. So do some one-on-one coaching. I don't do any contracts. You can do it like monthly, but at least catch 1 month where I sit you down and I treat you like the client. So you get an experience of what the client's perspective is. I'll set up your nutrition program. I'll set up your training program. We'll talk every single week, sort things out. You're going to crush your goals and feel good and look good, and you can use that experience to build your confidence and build your marketing. But then also now you'll have a better idea of what the client should experience and what they're going to feel along the way. So do the one-on-one coaching, and that is a great way to, like I said, just 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, whatever you want. You can commit as long as you want or as little as you want, but get the experience. Get firsthand experience, see what the process is like, get all your nuancy questions out of the way, and then start doing this for yourself. Start doing it for your clients. Start building some expertise. Start charging for this stuff. This is a great way for you to make some extra money, prove more value to your client, and then this is just going to help you also just feel better about the impact you can make in people's lives. If you want to sign up to be a one-on-one client, just shoot me an email at brutalirongym@gmail.com. You can also go to our website, www.brutalirongym.com. There's a contact us, thing there. But just get in touch, and I'll sort it out and send you the details. And then if you like this educational video, if you like the Patreon service, share it. The more people we share the service with, the more people we can help, make a difference in their life, and then also you build a bigger network. Everybody involved in Patreon, who does the Patreon community, who does the weekly Q&As, they're now people that are your people. These are your people. So network, get to know each other, talk a little bit back and forth in the community page. But this is a great opportunity to build a resource that is specific to what you love and what you like and what you want to be better at. This is your network. This is the way of doing it. Share it. The more people we share it with, the more people we can help. And then also, we do have a discount for supplements through Nutricost.com. Nutricost is where I get my supplements. So you can go to Nutricost.com, use the code BrutalIron10, you get a 10% discount. So you get great supplements, 10% discount, and then anything you spend, we get a 10% kickback on, a commission. You don't pay more for that, but it's in a way, I was using their supplements. I've been using their supplements for over 10 years. And I just reached out and I was like, hey, I saw you guys do an affiliate program. Would you be willing to set that up with me? And they said, hell yeah. So I was like, yay. So you get good products that I believe in, that I purchase for myself and my wife and my family. You can get those at a 10% discount using the code BrutalIron10. And then you also get to give back to the podcast, the Patreon service, give back to Brutal Iron Gym. And then I just use that money to do more cool things like the Patreon. So it's a great way to get great supplements, great price, and for a great cause. Cool. Okay, and then check out the other information we have on Instagram and YouTube. Make sure you like and subscribe, do all that stuff. It's under the name Brutal Iron Gym. As always, I hope this was helpful, and thank you for listening.